Oh, the suspense. Sound.
There's
Wait.
sound. All right,
There
let's
is
go live.
sound.
Yes, we've got
Alrighty.
sound.
Well, let us.
All right.
Hello. Yes. You guys probably
explodes.
understand. Like live chats are always a mess when it comes to getting everything
We've been
started.
pre-running this for like the last hour, and everything works fine, and then all of a sudden nothing works. So
the
good.
volume is good. Let us know if everything is like weird and we're too loud or too low.
Excellent.
We're good to go. Perfect. Well,
all right.
My heart was beating so fast for a second. I was like, that can't be right. We've prepared for like 8 hours.
Oh my goodness. All right, we're good now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live chat. We haven't been live in forever, and we should really be doing this more often because they're a lot of fun.
Should.
For some reason, I feel like I'm expecting Zoom call, and I'm expecting like
somebody
audio
to see.
back
Because
this feels like a Zoom call.
Yeah, so as we were saying when you guys couldn't hear us, Den is going to be looking at the chat. I am going to be going through the slides because we have PowerPoint slides for you. Yay, fun.
Yeah,
and
we do have some slides.
Yeah, so we'll be definitely reading your comments, and if you have any questions, feel free to jump right in, and we'll try our best to keep this not too long and to get to the point.
Keep up with the chat too, because there's a lot of people here already, which is really, really cool. So we're going to be going over the results from the live chat. We had 7,500 people take the survey, which is insane.
Absolutely amazing.
I have no idea what we were expecting, but that feels like a lot more than what we were expecting. So that's really, really cool. It gave us a lot of very, very interesting information, and it opened up a lot of discussions amongst us and our friends who we talk about boat design all the time. So this live chat, we're just going to kind of be showing a lot of pie charts and discussing them. And hopefully that's not super boring, because to us it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, so the point, again, just to back up a little bit, the point of the survey wasn't really to find all the answers out there when it comes to boat design. It was really to just open the discussion, because just like Dan said, we've had conversation about boat design with our friends and colleagues and teammates one-on-one.
Ever met us or hung out with us, like all we talk about is yacht design.
At some point in the conversation. Yes, and so we've had interesting conversations, and we've had a lot of questions popping up, but it was just on one-on-one conversation, and what we didn't know is what our audience thought, what the general public thought. And so we did figure out that if we came up with a survey, I know it wasn't the most extensive survey in the world, and we probably didn't ask all the possible questions, but hopefully it opened up a discussion and opened up the conversation to something that could be very interesting.
Yeah, and so far it has. A lot of the information that we've got back, I mean, most of it wasn't that surprising. A lot of it kind of falls into sort of a typical bell curve, but there were a couple of very interesting things that we came out of this survey. So we're excited to jump in and like share all this with you guys.
Yeah.
So if you're ready, we're gonna jump into some pie charts.
Let's do it.
Let's jump into some pie charts.
So, first things first, I think the biggest question of all is sailing experience.
Yeah.
By the way, when it comes to this, the charts and the data that we're going to show you is going to be self-explanatory. Basically, you will have the charts on one side, and then the color coding is going to be described on the other side of the screen. So if you're confused or curious, just look at the color and then match it to whatever it says on the other side.
And also, this whole live chat, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure we're just going to post when it's done. So if you miss something, or if you're curious about something, or you want to go back through it, it's going to be on YouTube once it's over, so you can rewatch it as many times as you want.
Yep.
We've kind of taken all the stuff straight out of the Google form and put it into what we think is a prettier chart, and shortened some of the answers a bit to kind of clear things up a little bit.
Well, yes, also because the data that came out of the form was a bunch of numbers, and we wanted to make sure that people watching this video it was readable, it was understandable in a simpler way, so it's not all words and everything is just easy, simple, we can go straight to the point.
But, so this question, sailing experience, we asked you guys because we just don't know. We kind of assumed that probably not a lot of old salts out there cruising probably still watch our videos because they're out doing it, and once you're out sailing, you don't have much time for YouTube. But we kind of wanted to see where your experience level was, so that we could kind of use some of that data to cross-compare other answers, because sometimes there was a split, sometimes it didn't matter. But it was pretty interesting to see that there's a lot of noobs and there's a lot of people that have experience, but overall, most of the people that took the survey have at least been on a boat and sailed a bit, so they know kind of what they're talking about, which is pretty cool to see.
What was interesting about this particular chart was that not a lot of people were racers.
Yeah. So maybe a little bit to back up a little bit more as well. A lot of what we see in the production design segment is for the charter industry, and it's trickled down from the racing industry, because a lot of the design and the engineering and the trends come from the racing world, because that's where the money is, and that's where all of the cutting edge design comes from. And that trickles down into the charter market, because that's the biggest. Like, if you're going to sell boats, you're going to make charter boats, because they sell them, and there's a huge market for those. And so that's what a lot of the market is, because that's just what it is. But most of the people we talk to really don't seem to be too concerned with racing or chartering, unless they got into chartering at the beginning just to see what a boat was like. So we kind of wanted to put this survey together to see if we were crazy, or if more people than just us and the 20 people we've talked to seem to share that opinion. And yeah, so that's why it was nice to see what your experience level was. And let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, and unless there's like particular questions that we may have missed about this chart.
I'm trying to keep up, but you guys are chatting fast.
You guys are chatting fast. As you can tell from the beautiful data we have behind us. This took us 4 hours to come up with, just so you know. That's what happens when you have hours and hours to prepare a live chat. You get creative. So.
That's true. That's what
we have a bit of an interactive background going on.
All right.
Yeah.
So one of the next questions we asked was what your relationship status was with boats. I don't know if you could tell, but we kind of had fun writing these questions. We've taken a lot of surveys in our lives, and usually they're very boring, and we didn't want to be that. So in a roundabout way, we were kind of asking, like, not just what experience you've had, but, you know, what's your current relationship with a boat, whether you own one, don't own one, looking for one. And it looks like there's a lot of information there.
There's a lot of information. And we wanted to end the survey stuff. We didn't want it to just be, you know, boring questions. We understand that survey is not always a fun thing to take, so we were trying to get as creative and as fun as we possibly can. So we decided to make the survey a bit of a commitment type of question related. So yeah, basically dated but never committed basically meant that you've been on a sailboat, but you don't have a boat. You never really found the right boat for you, for instance. And which is funny because most of the answers related to that particular point, that they've been on sailboats, so they know what sailing is, but they've never really committed to buying one. And then there's the next one would be married before, but in the market, which means that you had a boat, but you're looking maybe for another boat. And married before, but not looking is you're perfectly happy. And 3% of you are perfectly happy with your boat, which is completely fine.
Yeah.
We're happy for you.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we might be having a little bit of audio issues still. Maybe some crackling or some static. We do have like some fans and some inverters and like lights and stuff running. Let us know if it's getting better. Maybe we're clipping a little bit. But there's a bit of a lag on this thing. So let us know if the audio is better moving forward. I'll keep it on the chat.
I didn't know what to turn on to make the audio work, so I turned on all of it.
Maybe turn on one mic and not two.
So this is going to be a test. I'm going to turn one off.
Yeah, turn that mic off. Another thing would be all right.
You guys let us know if.
Yeah, that's the right microphone.
Works.
All right, if you can still hear us, great. No clipping. All right, cool.
It's not too bad. You can still hear us. Perfect.
I mean, we are on a boat. It's kind of noisy. We're not in a sound studio, so we apologize for that. And all right, what's the next slide? What do we got going on? Intended use is next. So this is one of the ones that we were glad to see we weren't crazy, because a lot of people get into sailing by chartering, but when they go to own a boat, they don't necessarily want the same boat that they charter. Because when you charter a boat, you want to sleep 8 people and go swimming every day, and like there's where your 4-cabin Beneteaus and your Bali catamarans, like those are great for chartering. But yeah, this just sort of confirmed our theory about most of you guys want to live full time on your boats, or at least spend a week to a weekend on it, which is pretty amazing, and not just charter a race, which was also pretty interesting. There are some racers in there, which is really cool, but they're definitely the majority of you guys want to live on your boats full time, which we find fascinating.
Yeah, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
All right, shall we continue?
Let's keep going, or we're gonna be here all night.
It also sounds like there is a bit of static going on in the audio. That might be because we have a fan that's running everything on, and so that's maybe what you're hearing.
Yeah.
But if you can hear our voices okay, then
Bump up our input just a tiny bit before we start clipping.
I kind of did.
Yeah, all right.
I think we should be okay. So we're moving on to the next slide, which is boat length. Boat length. Well, that was a very interesting one too, because there's a variety of different sizes of boats out there, and there's a market for all different sizes of boats out there. But the majority of you guys who took the survey really were interested in somewhere between the 36 to the 46 foot boat.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. The 36 to 46 seems to be a pretty standard yacht design. But what was interesting to see for us was that there were some people interested in larger boats. But what was even more interesting was that there is more people than we thought interested in smaller boats, which we found fascinating because everybody we've talked to in the industry, and they kind of have their reasons, but everyone we've talked to in the industry seems to not bother with anything under 40 feet. And that's mostly because the cost to build a 33-foot boat versus a 40-foot boat is very similar, but the profit margins on a 40-foot boat or a 45-foot boat are obviously more. So, actually, if you go to the next slide, I think, it's kind of broken down a little bit more. What do you have to say?
Before we jump into the next slide, based on what Dan said too, it's interesting because if you look at the chart, for instance, you have 11% want 33-foot boat, and only a 3% wanted a 58-foot boat. Like, yeah, definitely the smaller boats are more in tune of what people want.
Yeah. So the next one, we kind of took that data and split it into, I overlaid it with other data. So what we did was we took what people were looking for, like a 36, a 40, 46, and overlaid it with what they were looking to spend on a boat, which is quite interesting. So as you can see, like most of the people fell between the 36 and 46 foot line, most being 40 foot, which seems to be a really happy medium currently in the industry. But yeah, that 30 foot and 33 foot size we found very, very interesting because, yeah, more people are interested in smaller boats than is currently represented in the market, I think.
Yeah, which makes sense because it's a medium-sized boat is easy to handle. It's easy to single hand, easy to shorthand. Is that how you go?
Yeah.
When you're only like 2 or 3 people. The
or
bigger the boat,
trailerable or easier to fix.
Yeah, usually the bigger the boat, the more crew you need. Or if the smallest boats, you might not be able to live in it. So it kind of made sense that the average was between 36 and 46 foot boat, and everybody. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people wanted a 40 foot.
And so, yeah, and we haven't had time to go and compare and cross-compare, like, all the data yet. But one of the things I think will be interesting is to see what was I going to say? I don't remember now. Oh, how many people you plan on having on board and how many cabins versus boat size as well. I think that would be an interesting one to look into.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's true.
Yeah.
But based on with this question, we've also been having a lot of discussions on Discord with our patrons and the Human Nation. And one question that popped up was, if we were to design a boat, what would be the ideal price range that we would be aiming for?
Because in that original intro video, we were pretty ambiguous about what we were talking about. But no, I don't think currently this project that we're working on, I don't think is going to be like the single one-off custom design $2 million 40-foot boat. No. Because that is actually readily available. If you've got $1 million, $1.5 million to spend on a boat, you can get just about anything you want built in that 40 to 50 foot range. So what we're looking for is to get something out into the production side so that the price can come down to a point where a lot more people can afford it, but not have it be a charter boat, race boat knockoff that's currently in the industry.
Yeah, so we're thinking
if that makes sense.
If based on the data, if we were to design something between 36 and 40 or 42 foot boat, ideally it would be somewhere above 200,000 and somewhere underneath 500,000.
Yeah.
And why we're saying that is because under 200,000 means that you're sacrificing a lot of the design quality, and we don't mean quality by like luxurious stuff, but important structure elements and important elements that, you know, if you go with cheap materials, then it means it will break faster and the maintenance goes up, and so in the long run you'll be spending more money just trying to maintain that boat. But if you have more than $500,000, then you probably
You
can
can
get
start to get in the custom
the
market.
custom boat that you
Yeah.
want. Exactly.
Yeah, and so and then that opens up a whole nother question that we'd be interested to discuss with everybody is under 200,000 ish for a new boat in that 36 to 46 foot range means probably hardly any equipment or bare minimum equipment, which costs a decent amount of money if you're going to install it yourself. And also it means a relatively unfinished boat. And it'd be interesting to chat with you guys about if there's a market for basically a bare hull that you can trailer into your backyard and spend 5 or 10 years fitting out yourself before you launch it. I know it's been tried in the past, and there's been lots of DIY, even going back to like the ferro cement. I know that was like a big deal, and the people building steel boats in the yards and stuff. But I don't know, our audience seems to be really hard into the DIY, and it would be interesting to find out if there was some magic price point where, because it's hard to build your own fiberglass hull, it really is, but it's not so hard to build your own cabinetry and do your own, Korean countertops and install your own water maker. I mean, that's what we did, and we learned everything we needed to do from YouTube. So it would be interesting to open up that discussion about price point, but it would be nice to slot something into sort of the production market price point, but not what's currently in the production market.
All right.
I think that sort of covered it. But for the 12 of you who wanted a 58-foot monohull under $100,000,
There is a boat for you.
There's a boat for everyone.
There's always a boat for everyone. So if you have, if that's what you want,
yeah,
you can find one.
You'll find one. But there's no such thing as a free boat, and you get what you pay for. So good luck with that.
All right, so moving on now. Oh, this is an interesting one because in the survey we've asked you guys if you were to lust over a boat or a type of boat, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And we've had so many. I mean, we had 7,000 answers basically, and we couldn't find the right way to solidify all of them. So what we did, we just put all the words into a word cloud.
Yeah.
And asked the word cloud to bring up the biggest words that came out, the more popular ones. And it was interesting. Yeah. But for some reason, it wasn't so surprising to us that DS basically means deck saloon.
Yep.
And Sirius, Amel, which are solid boats. Garcia as well. And
Hovergrassy, Kraken, they're all in there. Island Packet. But yeah, the most written down word in there was DS, which is deck saloon. Which we found very interesting because there's not a whole lot of boats out there that are doing deck saloons, especially under like 50, 60 foot. Because once you get into 60 foot, you can kind of do whatever you want. So that was kind of interesting. This is kind of just a baseline. This isn't science. This was just, we haven't had time to read 7,500 individual comments for all three of these. So we thought we'd just toss them in a word cloud and see what showed up. And that was quite interesting to us. And the next one was, what was your favorite feature of that boat?
Yeah, and based on the answers before, that was also not so surprising.
Yeah.
The boat design itself, so most of it, the deck saloon probably was part of the answer, and the interior space. And there was a very big balance between the sailing, the performance of the boat, and the space and the comfort of the boat.
Yeah, that's the triangle.
Yeah.
So that's kind of no surprise. But it is interesting that a lot of you guys are looking, concerned, wanting well-designed interior space, which is kind of our thing. So that's pretty cool because the engineering and the hydrodynamics and the engineering behind hull design and stuff is relatively well known and understood, and it's been around for a long time, and there's not a whole lot of innovation in the cruising side because what works and we kind of know it all works. But what seems to be lacking is interior design and like the livability of these boats and the performance, not necessarily from the Bermuda rig and the carbon mast and the sail handling and the race boat performance is known, but I think performance means more than just how fast the boat can go or how tight to the wind you can sail. It's how well you can sail it without an 8-person crew. Because even one of the issues we keep seeing is that all the tech and trends that trickle down from the racing industry is meant for a 6 or 8 or 9-person crew. And so you get these big cockpits with winches all over the place. And in order to tack or jibe or reef, you have to hit auto and run across. They're very difficult to single hand. One of the things we absolutely love about our boat is that you can stand at the helm, tack solo without ever letting go of the helm, which is really, really cool and something that's not common anymore.
Yeah, it's very true. And a lot of smaller, older boats are like that, where you can easily single hand your boat because everything is compact and where you need it to be without having to run 12 meters across just to undo a line
Climb
to
over
run
the
back
cockpit
again.
table. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, which brings into the next
question
or a symbol of words, which is what is missing and the boat design in general that you think. And I love this amount of words because it's basically our ethos.
It just reads across. When we generated the word cloud, we both kind of just laughed at
Yeah,
it.
and if you read it one way, it says integrated design, solar system, better electric boat.
Yeah.
Which could just
So,
be
like,
a title on its own.
That's just going to be like the ethos of like whatever we do is an integrated design solar system on a better electric boat. That's basically like the whole point.
That's the point.
Of what we're trying to do here.
No, but
So that's hilarious.
It's very interesting because the thing that always shock us a little bit is where you can a production boat, for instance, you can buy your production boat, and unless you customize it, you buy the basic hull, and you have to ask to put a solar panel. You have to ask to have a wind generator. You have to ask to put a dinghy davit. Like everything that's not the simplest boat, is added. It is custom, and you have to figure out your own way to add your own dinghy davit, which doesn't really make sense. I think that, like solar, for instance, especially on electric boats, they should already be integrated into the design.
Right. Yeah.
And if you want more solar, then it should be an option.
Well, and again, it just harkens from the taking the technology and engineering and the trends in the racing industry, putting them into a charter boat, and then selling that charter boat, like maybe changing it a little bit and selling it as like a long distance cruiser or something like that. But you still, davits, solar, bimini, arch, cockpit protection, water, like all the things you need to turn it into a liveaboard are all these sort of like duct taped on, added little bits and pieces at the end, but they're not designed in from the beginning, so they always look, I mean, you guys know, you look at a cruising boat versus a racing boat, and the cruising boat has like all this junk on deck and all these davits and all this crazy stuff, because the boat's not designed to be a liveaboard cruising boat. It's designed to be a charter boat that you have to bolt all this stuff onto to make it, a liveaboard, to make it a proper, long distance cruising boat. So, I think from the design up, it'd be very cool to integrate a lot more of these systems so that they're, clean and simple and minimal.
I agree. All right, moving on.
What do we have
How
next?
many people on board? This one was a fun one because I was expecting a little bit more, but most people that took the survey, they were a couple, or they were two people, or they were maybe like a single parent with a kid. And so a two-people boat is the average insert, which makes sense if the average insert was something between 40 foot and 46 foot, because you don't want 8 people to live on a 40-foot boat.
We've had 8 people on our boat for the night, for a couple of nights in a marina, and it is not a long-term solution.
Yeah, it's a weekend, maybe an overnight solution if you're just gonna party.
Or if you're racing, like the ability to sleep 8 to 9 people for an offshore race crew, we kind of understand. But if you're racing, you don't really care about the quality of living in board. So sleeping on the settee, sleeping on the floor, sleeping in a pilot berth, it doesn't really matter as long as you can have a flat place to lay down. So we understand that. But having that as a design-centric aspect of a boat to be able to sleep 8 people outside of the charter industry is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, between 1, 2, or 3 people made up 80% of what you guys answered, which is amazing. Because a boat sails, if you're going to sail a boat with 1 or 2 people, it should be set up completely differently than if you're going to sail a boat with 6 or more people. It's a totally different experience.
That's true.
That was an interesting one to see, for sure.
Aha! So, guest accommodation. So, we understand as well that if you said 2 people or 3 people, then that probably will mean that you still want a friend to come over at some time, like you will have a guest. And it was interesting to ask because on our boat, for instance, we have 1 bedroom and we have the nook, which is basically where we put our friends.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's 2 or 3 or 4, they all have to cram into this little space. And it's for us, it's fine because we know our friends don't mind, but a lot of people rather have a guest with their own cabin, and which was interesting to ask this question because it was almost a 50-50 split.
Yeah, we didn't have any expectation for this one. We were just really curious about what you guys said. So, a lot of you opted separate cabin, but an almost equal number was like couch is fine. So, not sure what to do with that, but it was interesting to see the split. All right, what do you have next?
Layout. And before we go into this one, everything that we've talked about, from how many people are on board up to those questions, it kind of makes sense when you put them together, because if the majority of the answer is 2 people, then it kind of affects the amount of cabins and heads that they would want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also this one, the majority between 1 cabin and 1 head and 2 cabins and 2 heads covers about 70% of what you guys opted for, which, considering most of you opted for that 36 to 46 foot boat, does make a lot of sense, because if it's 2 people on board or 1 person, you need 1 cabin, 1 head.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a bit more, 2 cabins, 2 heads, if you got some friends, they can sleep in there. If you've got more for the night or 2, they can sleep on the couch, sleep on the dinette. But the standard currently seems to be to sell boats the same way that they sell houses, which is bed and bath.
Yeah.
If you walk in and you can get a bed with, 4 bed, 4.5 bath house, awesome. If it's 1,000 square foot, not so awesome. So boats seem to be sold the same way. They're packing, 3 cabin, 2 head in a 36 foot boat, which seems insane.
Which on paper, it sounds like a dream. It's like, oh, this
Yeah.
boat offers 3 cabins and 2 private
Yep.
heads. You're like, wow, that's amazing. But if you think about the size of the boat that's offered, and then you stepped on that boat, you realize how everything suddenly feels so congested, because they're trying to force all these extra amenities into
Yeah.
a small space.
Or if you make the boat a shape that can fit 3 cabin, 2 head comfortably, you're losing a ton of sailing ability. So, it's very cool to see that like the 1 or 2 cabin and 1 or 2 head was the majority, because that just makes the most sense to us, and also seems very underrepresented in the current market.
Mm-hmm.
Design style.
That's actually not really a surprise.
Well, it kind of is, honestly.
Is it for you?
What was interesting is that it sort of it matches up to our design style. So we feel pretty cool that you guys appreciate our design style.
That's true. Somebody commented that most people watching our videos want something similar to Uma. But it's not just that. It's like a lot of people today that want a new boat, they want something modern. They want something classic. And the people that want something old and woody and tiki, I don't know if that's a nautical term.
Tiki. I like it.
Tiki.
Those old boats that are tiki.
Yeah, and sure, I'll take it some more. But most people that want that are more looking into an older boat to buy, or a very classic. Like, what's the name of the classic that has?
Oh, I mean,
Like
there's some
has
beauty
fine
to the
lines.
old classics, though. Like the old, like wood and the Hans Christians and stuff. I mean, there's a certain particular beauty to those.
Yes.
But if we're starting down the path of all electric from the ground up, it ain't gonna be a full keel.
And we'll get to the keel in a second.
Ain't gonna
by
be
the
a heavy
way.
cruiser, because you gotta prioritize sailing performance and a sailing ability, not just performance. And
But we're not into
Yeah.
performance just yet.
We're
We're
on
in
to-
design style.
Get ahead of myself.
But if you think about it, a lot of modern production boats today, they are basically built that way. They are built a little bit more modern. They are built light and minimal and clean, because I think people are starting to understand that inside of a boat there's not a lot of light, and so you kind of want everything to be light and clean and minimal, so that you get the appearance and the illusion that there's much more space,
Yeah.
especially
Well,
on a small boat.
Similar to what we did with our boat. I mean, we've pulled out all the stops and all the tricks to make our boat look bigger on the inside. And I think we've done a pretty good job, because a lot of people, when they come to visit, say, oh my gosh, it feels so much bigger on the inside. So hopefully
Magic.
we'll be able to like sprinkle some of those into another design as well. So yeah, good to know that the modern classic, light, simple, minimal, and clean. I like how clean is the number 1, because it can mean so many things.
I mean, clean, tidy, which is important too, but clean as in
Clean lines,
Lines.
simple organization. Clean ties into storage, because you have places to put everything. You don't have this junk hanging out. You don't have there's a lot of boats that don't come with big enough hanging lockers to hang your foul weather gear. Like, so you're hanging it up inside somewhere. I mean, we struggle with storage on our boat. We've tried to maximize it as much as we can, but there's still severe lack of storage on our boat. So
yes, and the boat was designed with so many gaps that you had to feel like you had to customize your own boat to make extra space.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
shouldn't be that way. A really well designed boat should have storage integration. You shouldn't have like a little drawer and then 2 meters behind the drawer that is completely empty.
I saw a bunch of you guys commenting earlier about the cabins, about how the third cabin just turns into storage for your cushions and your fenders and your sails. And that just seems kind of silly, because your cushions and fenders and sails should have a place that they get stored, not just in a cabin, like a sail locker or a cockpit locker. But the problem with aft cabins and sailboats, if you're going to put a 3-cabin, 2-head boat on a 40-foot hull, you're losing all your cockpit storage and you're getting rid of all your sail locker storage. And so, yeah, the third cabin just becomes storage space. So why is it a cabin to begin with?
Yeah, we've been on a lot of friends' boats that have exactly that problem. We asked them, so what, like, where's your guest cabin? It's like, oh, well, if you're going to sleep over, I have to take all my sails out because
electric bikes, surfboards, stand-up paddleboards, fenders, sails, anchors, generators, like everything gets put in that aft cabin.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's one we've seen a lot, actually.
And on to the next one is cabin features.
Yeah, the next 3 we asked about: cabin feature, head feature, and saloon feature. And there's a lot to go over. We'll try to just brush through it. And it's interesting to see what you guys prioritized and what you didn't prioritize as well.
Yeah. So for this one, I mean, you can see all the must-haves are yellow.
Yep.
And then will be really nice is blue, and then don't really care is gray, and definitely not or like absolutely no way I'm gonna have this on my boat.
Seating areas near the bed, definitely not. Don't really care.
Which is interesting,
ironically,
because a lot of boat designs include that little chair/couch right next to the bed. And we always laugh at this because in our minds it's a design, I wouldn't say flaw, but it's a design choice.
It's an infill. It's like you do the bed and it's the right size.
There's an extra space.
And you do the closet and it's an okay size, and you do the head, but if you're putting a V-berth in, especially a V-berth, there's always this weird section that's not quite a step and it's not quite a closet, and you can't quite make it a desk because of the hull shape. And so designers just go, well, make it a cushion, because then it looks like we did it on purpose.
If you think about it in terms of architecture, we joked about it all the time in school, is if you see a big plant in a corner,
it's covering up something janky.
Exactly. It means that the designer put something there and he didn't know what to do with that extra space, so he put a plant.
Yeah.
Or a shelf.
He gets it. If you need a place to sit on the bed. Very good
exactly.
point.
We were having
Very
the exact same point. That's true.
Unless the bed's super tall, in which case, I don't know, sit on the settee. Like, I don't know. If it's just the two of you on board, you can kind of sit anywhere.
Yeah. But the interesting ones that were the most voted for were good headroom, which is a problem in a lot of boats. Mm-hmm. Well, it's never a problem for me because I'm 5 foot tall.
She can stand up on our nook and she still doesn't touch the ceiling. So.
But an average male, for instance, like Den size, Den is a perfect medium, we call him. And what are you, 5'10"?
5'10". Yeah.
So a lot of people, 5'10" up to 6 feet, they should be able to have decent headroom in a boat. You shouldn't. We've met friends that live on their boat and they end up having neck problems and back problems because they live on the boat that they have to stay like this all the time.
And there are some abnormally tall people out there, and those like 2 or 3% of you that are over 5 foot or 6'6" or 6'5" or something like that. Unfortunately, you might just have to get bigger boats if you're going to get a boat, because that's pretty tall. But headroom, a big bed, and good ventilation and light were definitely the top 3. Good ventilation and light, probably number 1.
Yes, I would say so too.
Yeah, especially because down below in a boat, even on a boat with a lot of light, I mean, it still seems kind of dark. It still seems like it's a small space anyway. So light is huge, ventilation's huge. We hear you. Yeah.
And one other interesting insert that we found was hull windows, because it's definitely a trendy thing in monohull design, which makes sense because they're trying to get more light into the hulls, right? But a lot of hull windows, when they're healing over, get underwater, and as much as they want to prove that it's safe and it's secure, and it is not anything less than sketchy.
It is safe. I mean, like the material that they make hull windows out of and the way that they glue them in is strong, is as strong or stronger than the hull they're gluing it into. So will it get scratched? Maybe. Sure. Like, can it break if you hit something hard enough, like a concrete dock? Yeah, probably can.
But your hull will break anyway.
But you're gonna damage your hull anyway. Like, it's the same strength as the fiberglass is glued into. But when you're heeled over at 20 degrees and you see your windows underwater, it is unnerving, and we get it. So the hull window one was interesting because a lot of you guys didn't really care or didn't necessarily want it, but personally, we feel like it might have more to do with what happens when they break, and you have to go underwater, because that's pretty weird to see a hole in your boat and see water behind it. That's like the last thing you want to see. So
although
we hear ya.
at the same time, one experience that we had when we slept on one of the modern halls that had the hull window, especially at where we slept, is that you could poke your head and you can see the mooring
really
ball,
cool.
for instance. You can check on the chain
Yeah.
line, and that was really interesting because otherwise you have to go on deck and check it. But it was really nice to be able to see and pay attention to what's going on outside with being inside of
Or
your
just
little
be
comfort
sitting
bubble.
down below and kind of be like, oh crap, our neighbor's getting a little close. Maybe we should go check to see if the anchor's dragging, or that guy's coming on up on a dinghy, or was that a jet ski that just went by? I mean, it's nice to be able to see out. We can stand up and look out of the windows on our boat, but it'd be nice to be able to see out while still sitting down.
Yeah,
Not gonna
agreed.
lie.
All right.
And then we asked the same stuff about heads, toilets.
Head features.
Unglamorous feature. It seems like most yacht designs just kind of brush over it. Toilet and a shower and
Everybody
sink.
needs to poop. That's sorry.
You're fired.
I just had to I wasn't planning on saying it, but I just had to. So yes,
So,
on that note, let's see what
heads.
you guys think.
Of no surprise, natural light and ventilation totally took the entire chart. It seems like a lot of you guys want natural light and ventilation, which in a head makes a lot of sense. In the main cabin, natural light and ventilation kind of makes sense, but if you think about it, what are you doing in the main cabin? You're sleeping. When you're sleeping, you want it to be dark. So natural light is one that needs to be controlled. Ventilation, on the other hand, I mean, yeah, we get it. Sleeping in a hot V-berth at night in the tropics is awful. So, natural light ventilation took the top of the chart on that one for sure. And then electric toilet, separate shower, and a wet locker were also highly rated. Although a decent number of you didn't want an electric toilet. And we'd be interested to find out why. It might just maybe because it's complicated, but I don't know. I think flippy manual pumpy toilets are more complicated than electric ones personally.
Definitely.
There's a lot more moving parts in a pumpy one than there is in an electric one.
Yes, so yes, maybe the misconception is that electric toilet is more maintenance, which honestly, we don't think that's the case. We think, because the electric toilet, you have one or two things to replace. The manual toilet, there's a lot of pieces in there, and
Little
there's
valves and switches and pumps,
and
you
tubes,
can you can mess up a manual one if you don't do it right. And the not to get into too much detail, but the exhaust hole of a manual one is very small. Whereas an electric one tends to be a lot bigger, and it macerates it in the toilet, so everything just happens much better.
That's true.
So, anyway, let's move on to the separate shower.
I'm not gonna
because
hold you guys too much on that one.
if you hang out with people long enough on a boat, always ends up talking about poop. It's like the number 2 or 3 conversation that comes up, which I think is pretty funny.
That's true. But before we move on, one last point that we had is messages that we've had afterwards was why didn't we ask about composting toilet? And composting toilet is a viable solution for some people, and it's very popular in RVs and in tiny houses for a reason.
Because pump out stations in RVs are awful.
Yeah, but the problem, and we've had a somewhat of a compost toilet. It was a Home Depot bucket.
It was basically a composting toilet, yeah.
But the problem with composting toilet is it's not as simple as you might think. It's very hands-on.
Yeah.
It's either you have to put everything in a plastic bag and then go dump it in a trash can, which not all places allow you to do that.
You're putting a black trash bag full of your own waste in your dinghy and taking it to shore and putting it in a dumpster. And that's one sharp dock corner away from a really bad day.
Yeah. And the other bad situation would be if you're offshore and you need to dump your toilet, the boat moves. You still have to walk across the cabin.
That was our number one nightmare for the first 3 years, was exactly that. Because we would dump ours offshore, but then you're walking with a bucket full of your own nasty through the boat while the boat's heeling and wind is blowing. And no matter how steady the wind you think it's blowing, it always eddies and swirls and puffs and gusts.
And you get poop
and no matter
dust in
what
your mouth.
side you dump it on, it's not good. And if you did ever need to dump it in an anchorage or near land, it floats. A big piley, cloudy island of sawdust floats behind your boat. Composting toilets on a boat just seem like a way overcomplicated solution to a very simple problem. And yeah, manual or electric and a holding tank just seem to be significantly better on a boat.
Yeah,
that's our experience having both on a boat. We would never go back to a composting toilet.
And somebody actually just commented saying that describing toilets, there's no such thing as composting toilet for boats. 100% agree, because
composting toilets don't compost.
They don't compost on a boat. No, you have to be on land for it to compost. It's called
like a dry storage tank or something like that. Yeah, in order to compost, you need to go bury it on land somewhere. And if you put it in a dumpster and it goes into a landfill, it just turns into methane. It's way worse for the environment than just putting it in the ocean, where it just turns into food for little fishes and bacteria. So
yeah. So on that note, we're gonna move on to the positive side of this survey.
Separate shower. Most of you guys wanted one. Makes sense to us. Most smaller sailboats with multiple heads.
Oh, we're sorry. Just
if they have a separate shower, it barely counts as a separate shower because the heads are just so small in most production boats. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very good solution to us.
It's very complicated to add. So what we found is most boats that we found under 50 foot, honestly.
Yeah.
All the heads are
monohulls.
Monohulls under 50 foot.
Great bathrooms.
Yeah. But they're basically like our toilet, where you have the head and then that space is either the toilet or it becomes a shower that it gets comfortable, which is fine for us, but that doesn't mean that we don't lust for, something that you can step on and you have the shower. And it was very interesting to see that we were not alone.
Yep. And showering in the cockpit is also completely viable. We do it all the time. Unfortunately, especially in places like America, where just hanging out in the buff ain't so popular on your sailboat, showering in the cockpit usually ended up happening at night, because anchorages, unfortunately, are usually pretty crowded, and finding really remote places is getting more and more rare. And so, yeah, showering in the cockpit is a little bit indecent in a lot to places.
Well,
so we shower at night, which meant it kind of cold.
Some places is just cold. If you're not...
Yeah, or it's cold. You want to take a hot shower inside. So,
and you don't necessarily want your toilet seat and everything else to get wet.
But now that we're in Europe and it's starting to be springtime, being naked on a boat is kind of just the norm. You come out in the anchorage, you're like, oh, hi, hello, how are you? So, we're gonna move on. Saloon is next. This one has a lot.
Wait, did I just change it? Yeah,
you did.
Oh yeah, this is a kind of I know it looks probably overwhelming.
There's a lot here.
But
because
we'll
the
try.
Saloon is where you spend most of your time, so there's a lot to ask about.
Yeah, so we'll start off by saying what the big items are, and then we'll probably go from one to the other. So, first glance, the two major things are storage, no surprise there, and instrument center. And by instrument center, we mean the nav desk, VHF area.
We kind of call it a nav desk, but I mean, even on our boat, it's sort of the main desk. But having some instruments down below to monitor things seems to be really important, which makes a lot of sense. It's sort of your eyes to the environment that you're in.
Yeah. A big galley, most of you said would be nice.
But I think it's about the right size galley, right? Because unlike a house where you want like a big kitchen, entertain everybody.
And an island and things like that,
I think on a boat, the galley just needs to be the right size. It needs to be big enough to have a big fridge, big freezer, big sink, good sized stove, enough storage for all your food and pots and pans. But it can't be too big, because then it's too big. And when you're trying to cook offshore,
you need security.
You need to be able to, you need security, exactly. And too small, you end up burning yourself, and there's not enough counter space to cook, and there's not enough storage. And so that's an interesting one to try to get right. I think some boats are a little bit too big, and I think some boats are definitely too small.
Yeah.
What else was there?
Being able to have 6 people at the dinner table
was meh.
Yeah, it was kind of neater. Or it would be nice probably that if you have a few people over for a sundowner or a dinner, that you could accommodate, but not necessarily every single night type of thing.
Yeah.
Some people even said absolutely not. If we were on our boat, we probably would have said absolutely not. There's no way we didn't need 6 people around a table.
If we have 6 people on board, we're eating out in the cockpit. Yeah, I mean, cockpit table for 6 maybe, but not down below. I like the comment earlier, the 246, sleeps 2, dines 4, party 6. I like that.
I like that. That's a good way.
So, a place for 6 people to crash when they're too drunk to go home. But, I mean, I think the dinette should seat as many people as the boat sleeps comfortably. like in the proper cabins with maybe a little bit of expanded space for when you have guests over, because it's fun to have guests over for dinner or play board games or plan a route or chit chat or whatever. But a lot of times, unless you're going high Arctic or really bad weather conditions like in the UK in the winter, you're going to be on the cockpit anyway because it's too hot down below. So maybe like a cockpit that can dine 6 to 8 people, but down below is a little bit smaller.
Or a
Something
convertible option.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like on a regular basis, you can sleep for you can have 4 people eating, and then if you want to, you can convert that space to allow more people to eat.
Yeah.
So, allow more people to eat, because otherwise you don't allow them to eat at all.
And the other one that seemed pretty important, storage was like number one, and a big galley was pretty high up there. But another one that you guys seemed to be pretty important was a bunk that you could sleep while you're offshore, which kind of makes sense because if you're on watch or if you're a couple, you're probably not sleeping in your own bunk. I mean, I know when we're as a couple, we don't sleep in the V berth because it's uncomfortable, but it's also nice just to have the second person off watch and asleep, but readily available if you have to call them up because there's a boat too close, or what about this weather system, or I think we need to reef or something like that. It's nice to not be too far away. So a bunk to sleep in offshore, especially if you're going to solo sail, then you definitely need one.
I know that as a personal feeling, I don't like sleeping in a V berth while we're offshore, mainly because I know when we're sailing, we are salty, we're dirty, our clothes are salty and wet, and after a long passage, the last thing you want is to have the place that you will sleep when you're clean.
Yeah, when you get to anchor,
also wet and
you
salty.
take a shower, and you get in, you're like, ugh, it's all humid and gross.
Yeah, it's not comfortable. So having a dedicated place that you can sleep in the settee while you're wet and salty, and then afterwards.
Sometimes in full foul weather gear. There's a lot of, maybe not a lot, there's oftentimes we're offshore that the person off watch is sleeping in full foulies and sometimes even a life jacket, because like you need to be ready to like get out there and do something, and putting your clothes on takes too long.
Yeah,
so,
especially if you're short-handed, like you're single-handed or you're two
just two
people.
of us.
Yeah.
But what we found particularly ironic was the amount of people that strongly did not want a TV because they seem to sneak into so many boat designs these days, or these big like raising TV things, which I think is kind of funny. If you're gonna watch a movie, it's gonna be like on an iPad or a computer
or a projector.
Like
like
we've got running.
This. Yeah.
But yeah, that we found kind of particularly ironic. So that's the saloon. Salon. Oh jeez.
Saloon.
We're gonna get murdered.
Saloon. I'm pretty sure it's saloon.
Salon is where you get your hair done. Saloon is where you go to drink.
But in French, salon is basically the saloon.
Check out this dope bottle of Chianti our friends gave us.
Oh, by the way, shout out to Sarah and Kim. If you guys are here, thank you for the bottle of wine. We've been saving this bottle since Iceland.
It's so like plump.
We've figured this would be a good time to open it up.
All right.
The last little point in this slide was a sound system, and that was an interesting question because we were not really sure what people would have answered, because we don't have a sound system on board and we're perfectly happy. We have a JBL.
The good old JBL.
Yeah, and integrated sound systems sound nice, but a lot of times the wiring is so tricky, and if something goes wrong with that speaker, then you have to undo a lot of things just to get to that problem.
Well, and honestly, sound systems seem to be one of those things that maybe on like a charter boat or a party boat it makes sense, but your typical fusion sound system with an interior set of speakers and an exterior set of speakers costs in the tune of like $10,000 to $15,000 to buy and install, which to us seems crazy because this is waterproof and portable, and we can take it in the cockpit and listen to music, and we can go to the beach and listen to music, and it costs like $300 or something like that.
And if you have two, you can pair them.
Yeah.
So you have surround sound.
And if you're in the cockpit listening to music, it doesn't need to be that loud. Like just a little tiny JBL is fine. So that's one of the ones we found often quite interesting that people still do. But
not
you guys
necessarily
didn't really seem to care
need,
too much about
exactly.
sound systems, which makes sense.
All right, moving on.
Moving
Head
on.
size.
What's you got? Yeah, so this kind of ties back into the layout of the boat. And that sort of trend we keep seeing, which is like 3-head 2 cabin or 3-head 3 cabin. And the heads are tiny. There's these weird little like wedges of origami toilet systems. which just are crazy small.
Yeah.
And we were curious if you guys felt the same way, and it seems a lot of you do. Larger shared head is much, much, much more preferred than smaller ensuite heads.
Mm-hmm.
So good to know we're not crazy. What's next? Cockpit layout and size.
That's a good one, actually, because
That's a good
cockpit layout definitely depends on multiple things. Whether you are a racer, or you're a cruiser, or you're the type of person who, they call it, you set your sail and you forget about it, or the person who wants to actively be out in the cockpit and doing its own thing,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
how many people you have on board. There's so many factors come into the cockpit design, which was very interesting to see that, like, a lot of you guys wanted more a small, compact, functional
Yeah.
cockpit rather than a big, more exposure cockpit
Yeah.
with the helms in the back and things like
This
that.
is another one that sort of completely went the opposite way of what the current trend is, which are these big, vast expanse cockpits that you could put 8 race crew on. 2/3 for both. Like a small, more functional and better protected, even if that means a little bit less visibility, were definitely preferred. So we found that to be quite interesting as well.
Yeah, and we totally understand, because when we've been on a couple different modern design boats, and we went out sailing, and when you're heeled over at 20 degrees and you're on the high side, and you look down and see the water,
And
and
the big
things
wide
are
transom,
scary.
4 or 5 meter wide transom, and you're heeled over.
It's a long way down.
You're looking down 5 meters down at the ocean, and there's and you just have this little helm you're gripping onto.
And
It
if
is
you
sketchy.
slip, and then not only that, but then behind you is also the water. So like you
Yeah.
you don't really have an angle to put yourself into,
Yeah.
to not be afraid of falling
And
downhill.
the problem is then if you need to reef or trim sails, you're going all the way across the cockpit, over the table, and across the other side on the leeward side, which is like in the water because the freeboard's so low, and so it makes sailing, wet and wild, but not necessarily what you want to do day in, day out for 20 or 30 days in a row trying to get across the ocean.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and again, like having two helms on the back, it makes sense for a race crew, because then you have a dedicated helmsman, you have a tactician, you have the person, like 3 people operating the lines and things like that. So it makes sense in the racing world. When it comes to cruising,
Yeah.
I'm not so sure anymore.
Not so sure anymore.
And that's why we were very excited to hear what you guys thought as well, because we've had all these questions boiling in our minds, and we've been always curious to know, like, are we alone? Like, other people also thinking this? And it's really nice to see, like, 65 to 60% of you.
And on Uma, the helm's pushed all the way forward, which makes getting in and out of the companionway a little bit claustrophobic.
That's
it's a
true,
little
yeah.
bit tight, but it's really nice to be able to helm the boat from basically full protection from the Dodger and not be way in the back and very exposed to elements. So
Yeah,
we love the helm position.
So
on
I
Uma.
think based on when I'm glancing at the chat really quick, it definitely feels like you guys would rather have somewhere in the middle, where it is a functional cockpit, but it's also not, a small tub of a cockpit, that you still have room to walk around.
Yeah.
You still have room to have people come and have a
Well, and-
sundowner with you. And
Exactly, because
Yeah.
the reality is, we've visited friends and fellow cruisers on a lot of monos and a lot of catamarans, and on a catamaran you sort of have the trampolines out front, which is nice, but everyone hangs out in the cockpit. And on a monohull, especially in the tropics where it's warm, everybody hangs out in the cockpit, and so having a larger cockpit to hang out in that's also still functional to single hand sail, I think would be a very interesting balance to achieve.
yeah,
Because usually if you have a big cockpit, it means it's really difficult to solo sail because you got winches on all corners and the helms on all corners. So, that would be interesting, I think.
agreed.
All right,
Right.
What's next?
Diesel versus electric. Oh, the question of
one.
the hour. This
question.
question.
Blew our minds.
Yes, agreed.
Because we've been going electric forever, and we've seen the industry start to trend more and more towards electric. And there's more and more sailing channels out there going electric, which is amazing. There's more and more sailors going electric. We weren't expecting these numbers. We were expecting maybe 10 or 20% of you guys to be like, yeah, all electric, awesome. But, the mass majority of you want all electric with the next largest slice of this pie for hybrid and a very small slice for only diesel. But what we thought was really interesting is when we split this one apart, based on that first question about what your experience was, the trend didn't shift too much. It definitely shifted a little bit more towards diesel and a little bit more towards hybrid, but a still huge percentage, like over 70%, almost 80%, were electric or hybrid electric, which we were not expecting at all.
No,
we thought those numbers were going to be flipped.
What's very interesting about this question too is that currently in the industry, in the design industry, when it comes to monohulls, is most sailboats are designed centered around a diesel motor because that's what they think
Since
that
like
everybody
1960s, monohulls have been designed. They put the motor in first, and they build everything else around it.
You know, the diesel engine is centered, and then you have the steps around it, and then you have everything. Everything is centered around it, so everything grows from that element. But then, based on those numbers, we're questioning ourselves. What if instead of being designed centered on a diesel engine, it was designed centered on an electric engine?
Yeah.
Like,
how
what
would
have
change,
changed?
right? Because then even if there is a generator, that generator doesn't have to sit on top of the sail drive, and so you can move it to an easier accessible location. It can be smaller because if it's just a range extender or it's just an emergency or you're just using it to charge up your batteries on the weekends when it's cloudy, it can be a third of the size of the diesel motor equivalent that you'd need to push the boat.
Yeah.
And so there's starting to be more and more manufacturers that are at least willing to put electric motors in their boats. 5 years ago, it was pretty much zero. And now there's like Salona and Arcona and Elon.
X-Yacht, I think, do this too.
I think X-Yacht may have just started offering. So the demand is starting to be there, but all of them so far are taking a diesel-powered sailboat design and just swapping out the diesel for electric motors, which is fine and it's better and it's great because you get all the benefits of electric, but it will be very interesting, and it's one thing we're definitely going to pursue is if you're designing around an electric motor, what changes in the design?
Yeah.
How does that change the design? Because the companionway and the centralized big 400-pound chunk of diesel and the tanks and everything, it totally changes the design of the boat. So it'll be interesting to explore that more.
Yeah, agreed.
What's next?
Backup fuel. That kind of ties into the same question basically on, like, a lot of you guys went either full electric or a hybrid system, and of 55% of you that said hybrid would definitely go into the diesel aspect of it, which makes sense because if you're going to go with the backup fuel, you want something that's available, and the most available fuel out there is diesel.
Yeah. That's been our experience. I mean, in Tromsø, we picked up our little gas generator because we were going up to the Arctic and almost to the North Pole, and we knew that we couldn't rely on solar and wind, and we were testing some untested software for our Ocean Volt, and we knew we probably needed something, and we're glad we took it because we used it quite a bit. But even finding petrol was quite difficult. Diesel is just the fuel. Like, if you see somebody on land in any country, for $5, you can probably get them to bring you a can of diesel fuel relatively quickly. And so if the generator really does become backup, emergency, range extending, not primary, auxiliary, then diesel seems to be the smart choice.
Yeah.
What was interesting is very few of you selected hydrogen because,
because hydrogen is a good idea, it's a great theory, but it's not viable just yet. It's not, you can't produce your own hydrogen, and to get access to hydrogen is almost impossible. So, I think diesel definitely, I would agree with the majority there. It's definitely the most available thing. And so to go with the 20% of you that said none basically means you have more solar, a battery bank, and or
a larger battery bank.
Somebody asked it on the chats, what is our capacity right now on this boat? And I believe we have
14
kilowatt hours.
Yeah, which is actually really small.
And we have no solar. Style. I mean, we have 2 solar panels.
Yeah.
I think 480, 240 each.
It was 480 when we installed it. It's probably not anymore.
So we definitely would be looking into more solar for us, for sure.
There was an interesting question earlier about fires at sea with electric from Jim. So I think one of the big issues that we're currently seeing, and we should probably do better at helping solve, is the difference between different types of lithium batteries. Lithium gets there's lead acid, there's AGM, there's gel, and then there's lithium, which everyone just puts into one category. There are so many different chemical makeups of lithium batteries, and they're not all equal, and they're not all comparable. What we have is lithium iron phosphate batteries, and you can put them out with seawater. You don't get thermoelectric runaway, and so and the BMS on board shuts them down if they short circuit anyway. So if we got swamped and the battery shorted, they'd blow a fuse, they'd shut down, they wouldn't light on fire anyway. You can shoot them with a gun, you can hit them with a hammer, you can shove a nail through them, they lose capacity. If the boat caught on fire, so the plastic casings of the batteries caught on fire,
we'd probably not be on the boat anymore.
We wouldn't be on the boat anyway. But lithium iron phosphate batteries you can put out with water. They don't have thermal runaway. So, if you're going to install electric, definitely know your way around safe electrical wiring codes and advice and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's probably a lot less dangerous than a diesel fuel, which is flammable, or a boat, which is flammable, and everything on board is flammable.
I mean, it's fiberglass.
It's plastic.
Yeah,
everything on our boat is made out of
meltable
plastic.
or flammable.
So if it's built right, it won't catch on fire. It'll shut off and shut down before anything happens.
But the technology of batteries it's improving so fast these days, and it's improving so much that there is a lot of options out there. I mean, there's a couple different brands and companies out there that are making very safe banks of batteries specifically for sailboats.
There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of rumor around lithium because there's so many different chemical makeups, and they are all different. Mm-hmm. And maybe we should make a video about that because there's
just better.
Part
of their. So I think we're gonna say the same thing. Part of this whole project is going to be not just to potentially design a boat, but also to dive into the research and learning about each step of the way. So maybe one of the research we do is to find a company out there with a lithium battery company that's willing to have us test some batteries in a safe way, obviously.
Yeah.
But seeing what actually makes a battery safe.
Yeah.
Or not safe.
Yeah. Part of this design journey is going to be a lot of learning, and it's going to be a lot of us experiencing and trying to educate and sharing that education with you guys as well. From keel design, electric motors and sail and rig and hull shape and battery makeup and chemicals and electric systems on board and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing our best to learn as much as we can over the coming years and share as much of that information with you guys. Yeah. So that the industry tends to have a good foundation to build off of, if I said that correctly.
So somebody asked what happened to the Hunter E Electric.
Hunter E Electric.
I didn't know Hunter made electric.
Hunter made an electric one, and Leopard, I think, made an electric.
But Leopard is a catamaran.
Leopard's a catamaran. Part of the issue, up until very recently, is that there's a timing to this thing, and the electrification of cars. I mean, there's been electric cars since, I think some of the first cars were electric in 19 something. So electrification is a timing thing with technology, and I think some of those earlier electric boats, like the Hunters and the Leopards, may have mistimed the technology curve by a little bit, because they were still putting AGMs and stuff, which made the boats really heavy. And as we found with our first electric motor and setup, lead acid batteries just do not have the capacity to push like lithium do. And lithium just continues to come down in price by the minute, and the capacity goes up by the minute. And right now, battery technology is very close to being on par with that diesel technology for price and longevity and life cycle expenses and stuff like that. So the technology has only been around for the last year or two, I think, to really make electric viable on a sailboat, and that's why we're seeing more and more of it trending, I think. I hope that answers your question. What's next?
Keel. Oh, this was a fun one because
this was an interesting one.
This was an interesting one. So we did one of those things where we split the answer into two categories again, where we differentiate those of you who answered with experience and those of you who answered without experience, and see what exactly the type of keel that you would want, what which one versus the other, right? And it was interesting that the less experience was, a shallower keel.
Yep.
Because, I mean,
we have a bit of a theory on that.
We have a theory on that, and shallow. So the three types of keel that there are: the deeper keel, the moderate keel. Well, there's also the swing keel and the lifting keel. We'll get to that in a second. And then there's a deep keel. And the most experienced sailors say the deeper keels. And our theory is that the more you sail offshore, the more you realize how much a deep keel matters.
Yep. I think
for stability reasons.
We know that a quite large majority of the people watching our videos, which means a large majority of the people taking the survey, are from America. And if you don't have a lot of sailing experience, chances are your first trip wants to be down the ICW and over to the Bahamas, because that's kind of the goal if you're living on East Coast America. We get it. Bahamas are beautiful.
And shallow, so that makes sense.
And shallow. And a lot of people think they want a shallow draft boat until they buy one and realize that they're very uncomfortable and they don't sail very well. And so it was very interesting to split this between experience and see that the more experienced people vastly preferred a deeper keel, which we 100% agree with.
Yeah. And I know on paper, somewhere in the middle, like a swing or a lifting keel might sound like the perfect combination, where you can have it deep offshore and you bring it up when you're in shallow water. You can even beach the boat. And for dieseled boats, it makes sense. But if we are going the route,
you don't care about performance, you can just motor.
Yeah, the issue is if you are going to have an electric sailboat, you need that performance. You need to be able to sail well and point into the wind as close as possible in order to get it out of situation and not rely on your electric motor to get out of places. And so that's why it makes sense that an electric would have a deeper keel, and that's why we didn't even put the swing keel into the survey.
Yeah, because swing keels and lifting keels, the boat still needs to have righting moment when the keel is up, which means they put a ton of ballast in the bottom of the hull. Like in a 40-foot boat, we're talking 2 or 3 tons of extra weight just in the hull, which means it's slower and less performance, so that when the keel is up, the boat still doesn't flip over. Because of that, swing keels and lifting keels are still pretty good at sailing downwind and still pretty good at sailing beam reach-ish, but going to windward, they definitely don't perform as well as a fin keel, a fixed keel boat. And so one of the number one things on an all-electric boat from the keel up would be fixed keel and relatively deep keel and probably relatively high performance keel, because you will be sailing to windward. Like that's what Bermuda rig, triangle rig, like sloops, all the boats you see that are Bermuda rigged with a foresail and a mainsail, they're designed to go to windward. They're designed to go upwind. And so turning around and sailing downwind in them isn't actually the best idea. They're not very good at it. There's better rigs out there if you're only going to sail downwind. So, swing keels and lifting keels and bilge keels and shallow keels, they all have their place. Not really on an electric boat, I don't think. Not yet. I don't know. Maybe it'll change.
And the last question of the survey, which was the most interesting questions because it took us by surprise.
Oh, I know. We were caught off guard by this one.
Somehow, 100% of you guys said that Sailing Uma was your favorite channel. And
we're just so honored that you guys would say that, because, we just thank you for
you guys are such angels. You guys are amazing.
We figured if we're going to make a survey, we were going to have fun with it. And I hope most of you got the humor in that. Some of you actually didn't get the humor in that, and we apologize. That was...
What's a survey without a bit of humor? We tried our best to keep it fun.
Most of the second half of that survey was mostly sort of just personal information that we're not really going to share. So the first half was all about boat design and trends in the industry. It wasn't really specifics about hull materials and keel shapes and rig type and like those are going to come. Those are going to come when we learn more and understand more and are able to slot different pieces of information into an overall thing that we're working on. So yeah, those were the results from the survey. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
I hope it raised a lot of questions,
Hopefully
because
it raised
that's
a lot of
the
questions.
point. The point isn't from this live chat to get all the answers out there. The point is to, every time we have an update and every time we ask you guys for your feedback, that it raises even more questions,
Yeah.
so that we can learn together and we can share everything we have.
The point of this whole survey was to just open the conversation. For us personally, it was to hopefully prove that we weren't crazy, because we kind of live in our own little UMA bubble, and yeah, most of the answers in there kind of proved we weren't crazy. So we're really happy you guys all took it. We're really glad that we have all the data from the results. It's going to be a lot of fun to kind of like, now that we have all the spreadsheets and everything set up, to kind of put the information in and cross-check it and compare it against different answers, and really get a better idea about who was saying what about what. But mostly, moving forward, those of you who signed up for the, like, added your email address and stuff, we appreciate that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you do want to follow along on this project, we just check out sailingmod.com/survey. If you haven't taken the survey but you still want to follow along,
Yeah.
just you can sign up. We're going to try our best to do a newsletter, probably monthly, just to keep you updated on everything. Because what we want with this project is full transparency. We want you guys to know every step of the way, because we want you guys to be involved with this. Because in the end, we want to come up with something that's interesting and valuable for the entire sailing community.
Yeah.
So if the more you're a part of it, the better it is for everyone.
Absolutely.
And we understand that there's no such thing as a perfect boat.
Yeah.
But hopefully we get to answer the questions of some of you guys who actually want something that we can deliver.
Not quite in the industry yet. Not that we've seen anyway.
Yeah.
Goofy Boots made a good point that we haven't covered quite yet. Why only so focused on monos and not cats?
We were going to answer that, but I think we got lost in the
slipped
chat.
by that one.
Can I start with this
You
answer?
can go
I'm
for
sure
it.
we both have a lot of points on this, but I think my take is catamarans are already so innovative in that industry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of catamarans that design from the keel up electric sailboats, and they are innovative, and they have ideas, and they are creative, and they already solve so many problems. And so I think what's lacking is the same innovation in the monohull industry, and hopefully that's what we're going to help with. And I know
Yeah.
we probably won't be the only ones, and maybe there are other companies that are doing the same thing, but maybe we can have a take on it. Maybe we can fill in the blank.
It seems like catamarans are a newer design. Like catamarans are newer generally. Like they struggled to get off the ground. But if you go to any modern catamaran yard, and there's a lot of them, what they're putting out is pretty good. I mean, they're solving the problems at hand. They're taking care of, like they're fitting into their niche. They're relatively new and developed and solving their problems in their own way. The monohull industry, in particular, seems to be stuck pretty hard on tradition, or racing technology trickling into charter boats, trickling into the used boat market, and there's not much else unless you have $1 million. So, because it just seems to be sort of stuck in tradition a lot of the times, and so that's one of the main reasons why not catamarans, is because the catamaran market seems to be fine. I'm sure that someday we'd love to design a catamaran, but also
We don't have experience on a catamaran.
that's the other reason. The other reason is we've had 8 years now experience on a 36-foot monohull as a couple with an electric motor, living on full time. And so that's what we know. That's what we've developed. That's what we've problem solved. And that's what we've spent most of our time thinking about and brainstorming. Yeah, someday we will spend more time on a catamaran, and someday we probably will have valuable input to add to the catamaran industry. But right now, it seems like monohulls need the most help. I don't know if that's quite the right way to put it. But that's kind of how we feel. That's where our expertise is, honestly. And it was interesting in the survey to kind of see that that's where a lot of you guys sort of lined up with as well.
Yeah. So yes, definitely. Thank you guys so much for coming, and so many of you. It's so amazing, from all over the world too.
Yeah.
And again,
Tons of you
like
guys
if you
showed
want
up.
to,
This is
if
cool.
you want to keep in touch with this project, definitely follow this link right here. It's and then you just fill up the form and let us know, and then hopefully we'll chat with you guys soon. Let us know also if you want us to do more of a live chat. Maybe not for the project or for the survey, but in general, maybe we do. Once a while, we just pop up and say hi.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be putting together some sort of monthly newsletter
Yes.
and sending it out. And like Kika said, if you didn't take the survey, but you want to hear more about the newsletter, the link takes you just to a quick form, name and email address. It's just us. We're going to be making the survey. We're not selling your data or marketing it to anybody. But if you're interested, definitely sign up for that, because we'll be pushing out any kind of behind the scenes information. We're not going to be making every single YouTube video from now on about yacht design.
No.
We're still going to be sailing. We're still going to be traveling. We're still going to be enjoying our lives on board Uma. And when we get the opportunity to do cool stuff, like find out how a keel is made or a mast is made, or learn more about hull design or materials, of course we're going to make videos about that too.
Maybe break some hull windows, who knows?
Heck yeah. We want to break
See
some stuff.
how much it can really
We
handle.
want to break some stuff. We want to burn some stuff.
Breaking some stuff is always fun.
So that'll be coming in the weeks, months, years to come. And this was just sort of the first step. So
Yes.
we're really happy so many of you guys took the survey.
Absolutely.
And we're really excited for kind of where this is all heading.
Yeah, and if you guys,
It's good to know we're not crazy.
it's good to know we're not
We're
the
not
only
crazy.
ones.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, we also have daily discussions on Discord and
Yeah.
on Patreon. So if you want more information, then, I know it's
Shameless self-promotion
shameless
101.
self-plug, but we do have a daily activity on Discord.
We've talked about this survey so many times in the morning report. We kind of feel bad for our patrons who keep listening to it. And we do have a whole Discord server dedicated just for chatting about this project. So
Yes.
definitely worth checking out if you guys are interested and want to follow along in more depth.
But either way, we'll still keep you updated in a monthly newsletter.
Yeah.
So thanks again, guy, for showing up. And I think that is it. That took
We've been out for almost an hour and a half.
An hour
So
and a
thank
half,
you all
yes.
for sticking around this long. We are now kind of going to bed because we're still in Central European time. And we'll see you guys in the next video.
Cheers.
Bye.